Hello and welcome to Drawing the Owl, a design vlog about me developing a tabletop RPG game that I'm putting together not to make my design any better and not to really present anything to you, except that I'm not very good at this, is the intent. So I have a big belief that at the moment in the RPG design space, we don't look at how difficult it is to do these things, and we don't look at how many failures people go through. Instead, we have this issue about almost auteur theory, where like we have the same 3 or 4 designers that are always lauded and are looked at as these kinds of game design geniuses, which they do very well and they do exceptional work. And I play a lot of their games, and I'm very, very happy about them. But what I want to show is that this is a difficult thing, and that it's something that is built, like a lot of creative endeavors, off the backs of several failures, and like sometimes really small failures and sometimes really big ones. And the reason this is important to me is that as I've been working on games and as I've been personally failing, I've been looking to these people who are successful in the industry and have been feeling inadequate against them because I've never seen their failures. Because Vincent Baker has never gotten on and said, "Oh, here's all the games I've designed that don't work," and John Harper's never released a video showing what Blades looked like before it was Blades. And that process and that procedure, I think, is something that we're missing in our community. And so that's the broad intent for what I'm doing here. It's not a scripted thing. It's going to go for about somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour, and then I'm going to bail and come back at it. These vlogs are not here to be the entirety of the design process. If you watch this from start to finish, you will not see every step of the design. Instead, you will see little pieces that should hopefully lend. You'll see my successes and my failures, and hopefully more of the former than the latter. If we're very lucky, once I have a decent game at the end of this, you'll be able to look at the actual play at the end and say, "Oh, like I understand how we got to there through all these like little fuck ups along the way." And that's what I want to do for you, to give you a bit of insight into the idea that it's okay to not be good at this. So let's talk about what I'm doing. We have hit a Steam sale recently, this weekend, I believe, where a game called This War of Mine is relatively free or something like that. It's really, really cheap, and it's because they're releasing new content. And when I saw that, I said to myself, well, I should go back and I should play This War of Mine again. It's a great game. I have a military history, and it's very powerful for me to look at the civilian experience in war. The game is inspired by the 92-95 Siege of Sarajevo, and is very much about scarcity and working together as a small disparate group that believe different things, basically. And I really want to develop a game that's a part of that because, like I said, I have a military history, and the civilian experience in war is one that's very close to my heart and my experience, and it's important to me. And so it's going to be about, or at the moment, what I think it's going to be about is about like constantly fighting to keep your feet. So you need to keep working to get enough food for the day, but in doing that, you're going to get hurt, so you need to get stuff for your bandages so that you can patch yourself up, and then maybe you can also get some things to trade, and you've also got to like develop some relationships, and maybe you've got little ambitions in there as well, like, you know, not like I want to stop the war, because you can't do that, but like I want to get out of here, like I want to, you know, pay the people smugglers to take me out, and to refugee in another country and stuff like that, and that's hopefully going to be within the scope. So it's going to be a lot about victory at cost, and a lot about how much something is worth to you. So like, if you really want this, you can get it, but what's it going to cost you? So I really want victories to be sweet, but I want them to be more rare and more costly. So what is this game about? This game is about these are Jared Sorensen's 3 questions, I guess, which is where I approach this. So what is the game about? The game is about the human side of war, the lives of civilians in a war-torn area. How is the game about that? It's with that scarcity and that struggle, and focusing on the humanity of the characters rather than on the heroism of them. The best example I can give for humanity versus heroism there is that in Dungeons and Dragons, if you're a fighter, you have the ability to do certain like fighter battle master feat stuff, right? Like you can just disarm people and stuff like that. But the game is very much about the heroic side of that rather than like it's about what you can do as a fighter, not about like what do you fight for, or is it worth it to you to fight, or like what happens to the people that you hurt. It doesn't want to be about that. Whereas I want to be about that human side of things. How does it reward the players for playing a game about that? Reward structures is something we will do a video on at a later date, but for now, and like core mechanic is something that I'll do the next video on. But for now, I want to talk about like my advancement, my reward structure, and my advancement is going to be that like when you do the things that the game is about or that your character is about, you will get kind of extra stats towards achieving things. So like you'll be more likely to be successful in doing the things that the game's about. And then that will unlock extra moves, and those moves will be valuable to you because they'll be like, if food is the problem, there'll be a move that'll be like, you know, cook this hearty, nutritious meal, and then you don't have to worry about food for 2 days or something like that. And that's going to be kind of that's that reward structure. More importantly, though, so that's Jared's 3 questions, and the other way I like to approach it is a thing called CATS. So CATS is conceit, aim, tone, and subject matter. It's usually used when playing a game, so when putting a game for people. But I'm a huge believer that you should kind of write games thinking about how they're going to end up at the table. So we start with that. We start with like that presentation. How would I want someone to talk about this game before other people are going to play it? And I'm going to start just by taking some notes on that as we go. So let's do that now. So CATS. Conceit. Now, what is the idea behind conceit? Let me pull up the Gauntlet RPG version of CATS, or the they've got a really nice Google Doc quick pick to it, and I'll throw it up on the screen as well once I get it up. Okay, let's pull this over there. And let's screen share for y'all. All right, fantastic. So pitch, conceit. What is the game about at a high level? So the example they have is Conan-like fantasy in a desert country. People are cruel, monsters are uncommon. Magic is rare but terrifying. That sounds like my Swords Without Master game. So conceit. The conceit for this game is about civilians surviving in a war-torn country. Encourages intimacy / working together. Discourages violence, destruction. Cool. Aim. What are we trying to accomplish? So this is a really, really interesting question. What are we trying to accomplish? Can someone win? Do we have a win state that we're moving toward? And I think I do. I think I do want a win state. I'm a huge believer in humane exit points, which means you should have two ways out of a game. One way should be succeeding and getting what you want, and the other way should be I'm kind of done playing this character or this game, and I'd like to find a way out of this. The really boring humane exit points are like D&D's you just retire, or Blades in the Dark doesn't have one that I'm aware of, which is interesting because I would like to see that. I'd like to see with Blades in the Dark, you can get out whenever you want, but if you don't have a big enough stash, you're getting out into this abject poverty. And I think that's probably okay. This is why exit points are an important discussion, because that is part of the intent of Blades. All right, so that's the point of Blades in the Dark, is that you begin in poverty. If you leave, if you as a in the first session of a Blades game say, oh, you know what, my guy doesn't want to be in a crew anymore, so I'm going to just leave, just go. Then you do that. But you retire into abject poverty, so you're stuck. So let's have a look at stash and retirement here. So let's screen share this for you as well. Blades. Okay, so stash and retirement. When your character marks your final trauma and they retire, the amount of coin they've managed to stash away determines their fate. Your stash tracker is on your character's character sheet. Stash 0 to 10. This is where you start. This is episode 1 of the game. You end up in the gutter, awash in vice and misery. You end up in the gutter, awash in vice and misery. This is John saying something to the people that play this game. If you don't want to end up in the gutter, go steal from people. Oh, but I don't want to. My character's got a conscience. Great. The character gets a conscience. They retire, awash in vice and misery. That's what exit points are about. That's what exit points should be about. That's why discussing an aim is important to playing a game. Because if you don't know what ending looks like, you have no context for the game. That exit point, saying to someone your aim in Blades in the Dark is to and by the way, when it talks about aim, if you have a look back at the other one, if you ever look back at this sheet, it says like to have fun together, to find out what happens, fill the characters' lives with adventure. Look, that's fine. That's not how I approach AIM. I want to approach AIM from more of a what are our characters' aims perspective, because I recently posted something up on Twitter about this. One of the big differences between Blade's characters and Apocalypse World characters is that in Apocalypse World, your characters can't have big ambitions, and players need to know that. In Blades, your characters need big ambitions, and players need to know that. So AIM for me is much more about like what do we want from our characters? Because our aim in all games is to have fun together, find out what happens, fill the characters' lives with adventure. There is not a game in the world that is not about that. What adventure means is a very, very different thing. But like in Dread, which is a horror, or in 10 Candles, which I'm much more familiar with, in 10 Candles, which is a horror game where everyone dies, our goal is to, as players, have fun together, find out what happens, and to fill the characters' lives with adventure. But our goal, and in Dungeons and Dragons, which is high concept dungeon fucking, we want to have fun together, find out what happens, fill the characters' lives with adventure, and they're the same. It's always that aim. That's why I play games. However, character-wise, in Dungeons and Dragons, our character's goal is to like in Curse of Strahd, it is to unseat the Dreadlord Strahd so that we can return home to our mortal plane. In 10 Candles, our goal is to make the final moments of these characters mean something. And that's they're so drastically different, even though they have the same player level aims. So back to Blades. This is what John's talking about. His exit points are be in the gutter and trash, and like it's like he's taking a very capitalist, I guess, view of what like homelessness and poverty is, which I've been homeless before, but I've never been in poverty. And he's taking a very clear view of that, where he's saying that being in the gutter is a miserable, vice-filled experience. He's not saying you end up in the gutter, tell us about the people you meet and the friends you make, which I will say, as a homeless person, I made excellent friends. But he's saying like that's the thing. And by the way, like a Stash 40 character that he talks about as well is like the approach is a well-appointed home or apartment, claiming a few luxuries, you might operate a medium business, which is like really quite moderate as well. Like Stash 40 is a massive, massive investment in this game. You have done a lot of stuff to get to Stash 40, and you like might operate a medium business. Like the best you can have is this kind of middle class, which speaks a lot to the game as well. And that's what like we're sitting down with. Aim for Blades is our character's aim is to like just fucking make it. Just make it to middle class. Actually, speaking of games where the goal is just fucking make it, we should probably talk about Night Witches, because Night Witches is very, very interesting because there are two aims that you can approach Night Witches with, and I love Night Witches. If you get a chance and you haven't played it, you should. It is a beautiful, beautiful game. We're going to talk about the pitch. Okay, so this is interesting because the pitch in Night Witches goes through what we're going through here. No, Night Witches. Okay. The pitch. Concept. Pitch the game at a high level. We're playing Soviet women in an all-female night bomber regiment during World War II. We'll be pilots and navigators. Great. Aim. Our mission is to harass the German army which has invaded our country. The war is brutal, and it is also beautiful. But it is brutal and horrific. We fly obsolete biplanes. We drop bombs on the Germans. Things are desperate. It's dangerous. We fly in the darkness, sometimes a dozen mission a night. The Soviet army wishes we didn't exist. Nobody expects us to succeed. We are going to succeed anyway. That's your aim, right there. Our mission is to harass the German army. We're not going to succeed. Like, nobody wants us to succeed, but we're going to. We're going to make it through this war, and we're going to fuck up the fascists. And that is a beautiful expression of aim. This is an excellent chance to talk about games that I don't like when it comes to aim as well. I have a lot of respect for Uncharted Worlds and Sean Gomez, I believe it's pronounced. It doesn't have any pronunciation guide, so I'm taking a crack at that. I have a lot of respect for Uncharted Worlds, the work that Sean put into it. I don't think it is a good example of a Powered by the Apocalypse RPG. I don't think it's a good one because it doesn't offer that character aim. It doesn't offer a pitch. It doesn't tell you what the game's about. Let's have a look at the what is Uncharted Worlds thing, because it's a little bit, it'll give us a little bit of context. Okay, so Uncharted Worlds is a space opera of discovery and adventure, which explores a universe full of beauty and hostile frontiers and crippling death. It's a story building game. Dramatic encounters move the narrative onward. Great. Uncharted Worlds is at its heart a space opera. The rule of cool is in effect. Don't get caught up in the details. Great. So this is an example of why an aim is important. And my experience with Uncharted Worlds speaks to this as well. Uncharted Worlds at no point tells you what your character should want or what you should care about as a character. Should you go into Uncharted Worlds from the Blades in the Dark perspective, where you have big ambitions and you want something and you're like, I want to go and do this and fly off into the world and do all these sorts of things? Or should you go into it with the very clear ambitions of Night Witches of like, we're going to bomb the Germans and that's like what we do. We're going to follow orders. We're going to follow them good. Or are you going to go into it with the approach of like 10 candles, which is, these characters are going to die. Our goal is to give them something to care about and to make their lives mean something. Uncharted Worlds doesn't offer you that. It just says we're going to play a dramatic story. Uncharted Worlds, I believe, is more of a toolkit kind of game, and that's let's actually have a look at the Fate SRD as well, because that's gonna have the same thing that you're seeing there. So that's my problem with Uncharted Worlds, is it doesn't tell us what's going on. On the other hand, a game that also does a really good example of this, second John Harper reference for the day. And when I say second John Harper reference, I mean his second game. I've obviously referred to him as a person a couple of times as well. Lady motherfucking Blackbird. Lady Blackbird is an excellent example of a game with a clear aim that then offers you a space to play in that aim, and offers you exit points, humane exit points, right? So Lady Blackbird is on the run from an arranged marriage. She's hired a skyship, the Owl. How will the Lady Blackbird and the others escape from the Hand of Sorrow? What dangers lie in their path? Will they be able to find the secret lair of the Pirate King? If they do, will Uriah Flint accept Lady Blackbird as his bride? By the time they get there, will she want him too? That's your aim. You are the crew of the Owl. Your goal is to get Lady Blackbird to Uriah Flint and have him accept her as his bride. Well done. But then, and I'm not going to beleaguer this because we'll go into it more in a second. This here, key of the mission. Key of the mission is a humane exit point. Buy off, give up on your mission. You can just choose to give up. You just choose that that's not what you want to do anymore. And maybe you want something else, and that's fantastic. We can then play that game. But Lady Blackbird or any of the characters really can just choose to give up. And that's beautiful. That's humane exit and humane aims. So we're going to talk about humane exit points at a different time. For now, we're going to go back to aim, and we're going to say, what is the aim of this game, basically? What do I want to achieve, or what do I want people to play their characters toward? So at the moment, we've got conceit, civilians surviving in a war-torn country. Aim. Characters' aim is to survive long enough. I don't know if there we go, that might be a bit easier for y'all. The character's aim is to survive long enough and to collect enough valuables, I guess. Enough value that they can purchase transport outside of the country. I have a very personal relationship with people smuggling as a concept. I worked in the Royal Australian Air Force, and Australia has a really, really bad approach to people smuggling, where we place people in offshore detention. And sorry, this is me speaking as me, not from my experience in the Air Force at the moment. We place people in offshore detention, and we do that to we do that to disincentivize people coming over to Australia through illegal maritime entry. I understand the intent. I disagree at a personal level with the intent, but that's our approach to it. So my personal relationship with it was involved in asset management to ensure that we had Northern Border Patrol during the early stages of that coalition government that said that they were going to stop the boats, and that was a very and like illegal entry vessels, or actually suspected illegal entry vessels, was a very daily occurrence for me, or several times a day occurrence for me. And I would like to present that as a happily ever after. I would like to present departing. I'm not familiar with the refugee experience personally, and I know that to be another story and another game, but I would like this at the moment to be the happily ever after of the game. Is you are taken out of the country, and you are like your people smuggled out, and you kind of go to the land of milk and honey, like that are out there. The war doesn't exist somewhere else. So that's what I want to approach, is that you purchase transport outside the country, you go somewhere, and it's better. It's safe. Safety. And that's the big thing, is that I don't want players to feel safe during play. I want them to feel safe after play. Maybe moments of safety. Tone. Why is tone important? Tone is important because it sets an expectation at the table. If you have a tone that is based on high adventure, wild kind of extravagance, then okay, let me tell you my tone story. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It was a joy. We were playing Lost Mines of Phandelver. A friend of mine was a new GM, and we, as players, had a tone discussion beforehand with the GM. Had a tone discussion beforehand, and we decided we want to go for this really like serious tone where individuals cared about things. We cared about the characters, and losses meant something. So we mechanically were playing the same rules as everyone else, but we had a very different tone. And what that meant was that when we fought the goblins, someone got injured, and our descriptions were visceral and all that sort of stuff. It was it mattered to us. We cared about it because we felt that we empathized for those characters. In the third session, a friend of his joined who was not part of that tone discussion, and he created Rodney the Randy Rager, who was a stark naked barbarian whose key ability was, or his signature move, I guess is the term, would front flip over people, or backflip over the goblins' heads and hit them in the head with his penis. And that's fucking great. Props to him. And if he ever sees this, mate, I thoroughly enjoy playing with you. You're a great person, and I'll play with you any other time. That character violated tone so hard. So hard. And so when you've got Junie, this little bard who's like struggling to get through her day, and she's like, oh, I'm just so far away from home and everything's hard. And then this guy's like, here's my dick flip move. That doesn't work. It doesn't function adequately. So tone discussion is important. And here's some of the examples that they talk about in this is the tone could be serious versus gonzo, action versus drama. Other options for gameplay come to consensus. So the example, grim, but players are free to interject humor when appropriate. If things get gonzo, we will break to get it out. This is always a table discussion, much more than it is a design discussion, but it's important to think about. And this is a really important part of it. This little picture that is representing tone here of dials. Tone is very much a dial system. And the reason that we have to talk about dials is that you can design space instead of designing functionality. So here's an example, and it's kind of those toolkit games that I was talking about. Fate is a game that designs space, whereas Apocalypse World is a game that designs functionality. So Fate says, make characters, have them care about things, tell a story, pick an area. Let's actually have a look at what they say in game creation for Fate. Let's have a look together. You can use Fate to tell many stories in many different genres, variety of premises. They should be proactive, competent, and dramatic. And that's how Fate tells you to create things. Create a setting, scale, and issues. That's that's how Fate approaches tone and dials and stuff like that. And that's the that's like a really important content approach to this kind of conversation. If I come back to, I just want to check Night Witches and see if Night Witches discusses tone, because that is also a game that can dial it a little bit. Okay, so Night Witches talks a lot about its content and like historical, gender, queer content, but it doesn't talk about the way that you should approach that tone at the table specifically, which is fine. Yeah, cool. I was just really hoping, because Night Witches is so importantly about tone, that was I was hoping that would be in there, and maybe it is, and just no one's told me. Yeah, so dials. So tone is dial-y. And so maybe we can talk about edges that we wanna be on. So let's talk about like let's talk about our edges. So like tone, we want it to be intimate. We want it to be focused. We want it to be desperate, maybe. So we want small ambitions. We want external pressure. We want oppression. From individuals, maybe groups, war as a concept. Not heroic, not gonzo. I think it's probably the closest we want to get to tone. And subject matter is going to be the rest of the discussion. And that's not really how we want to approach it now, but just to continue this conversation. Subject matter, what ideas might be to explore through gameplay. Do they make people uncomfortable? Discuss set boundaries. This is more of a table discussion, but subject matter I'm going to approach from is that I have a very specific relationship with violence, and so I will be approaching this with that subject matter, which is that I want violence to be really impactful, so that if someone gets hurt, it's going to suck for everyone involved. And that's actually, again, as part of my design process, that's like this sort of thing up the top here. So these are my design philosophies that I'm talking about here. This is all stuff we've discussed. The what is this game about? How's it about that question? And then this, not violence focused. So getting shot fucking kills you. You don't have the ability to externalize violence. I don't know if don't have the ability, but you probably shouldn't have the ability to externalize violence. And the reason for that is that I want this to be a group of people who are struggling through war, not a group of people who are becoming the war. I have written games about people who can externalize violence, and who do, and to whom it's a very safe option. And this is not going to be that game. Cool. So that's the conceit. That's the general conceit of what we're going through. That's what this game, which is looking at. Now, the original idea for this game is a Blades in the Dark hack, which is not where it's looking at going now. Instead, it is looking at becoming an Apocalypse World hack. And the reason for that is, as my Twitter rant in the last 48 hours talks about, the aim that we're talking about here. So let's come back to my aim. This aim that we're talking about like surviving long enough and about like purchasing transport outside the country, this kind of like working against oppression thing and having lots of external pressure is very much an Apocalypse World or a PBTA setup. So let's put system here. Probably talk more about it another time, but PBTA games are often about immediate needs, so like food, water, sex, and Forge in the Dark or Blades games. And I keep saying Forge in the Dark, but there's really not enough of them out there to be this fair. We're mostly looking at like Blades and Scum and Villainy at this point, I guess. Villainy, that's a funny word to spell. I'm more about like big ambitions. To like run Dust Bowl. And it's the thing that being middle class in Blades is a big ambition, especially from where you come from. External pressure. So PBTA, you get this external pressure. So like Rockfall has water that wants to wants Marie. Let's go Marie. But wants Marie dead. If you want water, you need to handle Marie, right? So that's how Apocalypse World and PBTA generates gameplay. Another example is like if you don't want the NKVD to arrest and interrogate you. Oh, hello, 2 hours and interrogate. You need to fix this aircraft. If you want to fix this aircraft, you need tools from the men's squadron. So like, in fact, this is kind of a really good example of like, of how PBTA creates gameplay. If you want the tools, you need to deal with Lieutenant Petrov. If you want to deal with him, you need to act up. And so that's how Apocalypse World does it, which is that you have a need. You need to not be arrested, which probably shouldn't be you want, but it's like you need to not be arrested by the NKVD. And so it's so you want to fix this aircraft, and it's that like flowing needs from wants thing. With this Apocalypse World version, you know, Rolf Ball has water, so you need water. Rolf Ball has it. If you want him to give it to you, he wants Marie dead. If you want to handle Marie, you need to find someone else who can fix or who can make bullets. Right? So this is really, really simple Apocalypse World stuff, which is like you need food, water, sex, and obviously bullets. Bullets are always important in Apocalypse World. So you need to find someone else who can make bullets, because that's what Marie does. Marie makes bullets. So if you want to handle her, you need to find someone else who can do it. And it's this kind of like, if you want, what's another fun Apocalypse World name? If you want balls to make you bullets, you'll have to pay him in butter. If you want butter, you need to, let's say we're an angel, right? You need to fix people up. Let's say patch people up. It's a little bit more. You need to patch people up. Means you need to go to the, let's call it the shoots, where Lithium's gang are always getting shot. That's how PBTA flows through. You have a need, you have an immediate need, and that makes you go and do the other stuff that is fun, but you don't necessarily want to do. There is no reason. The character doesn't want to go to the shoot flats to mess with Lithium's gang. That's absolutely not something you want to do. That's dangerous. That's a bad thing. But that's also where the game happens. You need to break some rules, right? Where the game happens. And a good game actually happens at every step. So, for example, fixing the aircraft is also a move in Night Witches. Dealing with Lieutenant Petrov is a part of the game. Breaking some rules is part of the game. That's all a big thing. Fortune Dark, on the other hand, you don't have an immediate need. So characters don't have needs or don't have obligations. They have ambitions. So what in Blades makes you go out and do a score? It's not eating. There's no like starvation mechanic, right? Time doesn't pass if you don't do a score. Originally in Blades, if you listen to John Harper talk about it, one of the early designs talked about weeks, and in the weeks thing there was like this ticking clock. So you did have to pay obligations throughout the ticking clock. That's my understanding of it, having not seen version 1. But in the current version, instead, we've gone to phasic. And in phases, you don't have an obligation to anyone else until you do a score. So doing the score, and that's really, really important, because Blade's characters are not obligated to anyone. Instead, they have ambitions, right? So you have an ambition is like to run Silkshore. This is an example I used before, so apologies if this is a new thing. So you want to run Silkshore. Because you want to run Silkshore, you need to disempower the wraiths. Disempower the wraiths. There are many ways to do that, but let's say, for example, in this one, you're going to blow up their tower. I think the wraiths had a tower in Silkshore. And then, so you do that. And then, like, if you want to blow up their tower, you need to do a score to get explosives. And then you need to, so that's the Blades pacing a little bit better. And it's interesting because again, blowing up the tower is a cool score. Doing a score to get the explosives is a cool score. So that's like the thing. The thing I was talking about before about how the game should exist at every step of the way. And this is the reason that I'm looking at my scavenger name. Scavenger's a shitty. Well, when I spell it wrong, it's a shitty name to give it. I'm just going to call the game at the moment. I called it originally like Forged in this War, and let's call it that. Even though it's not what we're going to end up calling it, it gives us Forged in this War. And this will give us a reason to change the name to. So Forged in this War. So you have a need for food, water. Let's say you need food. You need food, and you get food by using a resource in the game. So that lets you, so if you want food, you need to consume resource. If you want resource, you need to go scavenge it. But if you want to scavenge, you need to be healthy. So maybe not healthy, but, or maybe you need someone keeping watch. Or maybe you need, yeah, I like to be healthy. Or to get patched up. And so this is the difference, is that in Apocalypse World, pressure is externalized upon players who push back. Characters who push back. In Blades, pressure is externalized from the player characters upon the world. Oh, let's just say world pushes back. The world pushes back. So in Blades, the question comes from the MC, goes to the players who offer a response. In Blades, the question comes from the PCs, who, and then the GM offers a response. And so this is why at the moment I'm looking at doing an Apocalypse World, a PBTA game, because I think PBTA functions better for a game about scarcity and a game about needing. The reason that I think that happens is that Apocalypse World is a game about restriction, and Blades is a game about options. In Apocalypse World, your moves are, and we'll talk about this, I'll talk about this in the next step. In Apocalypse World, your moves are positive design space, and in Blades, they are open design space. I will talk more about that. Yeah, definitely in the next time I do this. And so this is where we're at now with civilians surviving in a war-torn country to survive long enough and generate enough value, and a tone that is intimate and focused on small ambitions with external pressure. So we're going to look at a PBTA system for this for the reasons that we looked at there. And so let's talk about next time. So next time we talk, I'm going to try and have a name that isn't tied to Forged in the Dark. Tied to a system you're not using. It'd be like me calling this Dungeons and Bombed Out Shelters. And we're going to talk about moves and examples and analysis. We're going to talk about analysis of moves that exist in PBTA. And so I'll go through a stack of PBTA games. I'll grab the moves out of them. We'll talk about what function they serve and how I want to integrate that into whatever this turns out to be called. Thank you for helping me to draw this owl. I look forward to speaking to you next time.